Whenever I see that, it reminds me that we need to do more of these, because there was a time, I think was it 2020, we started the Crux Cast, and we got really into it in 21. And we were, and in some weeks we were doing 3 a week. And you're in that video. Did you notice yourself?
Right at the start, yeah.
Right at the start.
What a difference as well between then and now.
I know. I feel myself. It's like a track of my life. I'm getting grayer and older looking as the videos progress. Brett, it is so nice to have you. Considering this is the one that never was. We tried to do this last year, but the technical gremlins got a hold of us. So this is a redo, right?
Yeah, a redo.
This is a redo.
Absolutely, I am the one that nearly got away.
The one that nearly got away. Hi to John. Hi to Anne. Thanks for joining us. This is a special one because it's on a fantastic topic. It was the first time we did this. We got together in March of 2021, and we did your first Crux Cast. And how things have changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
My goodness me. So for those, welcome to the Crux Cast. This is Crux Cast number 67. Which is brilliant, with Brett. Brett from Omniscient Safety Innovations and Chamelli, which we'll unpack in just a little second. Fully, for those that know Brett, you will know that he is absolutely immersed in this the hot topic, the crucially important topic of mental health, specifically in workplaces, right?
Yeah. Immersed is a great word, right? But I think probably other people would be saying he's drowning in it. but yeah, immersed is a nice, gentler way to say it. Yeah, I'm totally immersed in it. So
for those that don't know, and you are the world's best company name chooser, Omniscient Safety Innovations and Chamelli. What's the difference between the two in layman's terms?
Okay, well. First off, I think you said that deliberately because last time I told you that Omniscient Safety Innovations seemed like a fantastic idea at the time, but then on emails, it's not as easy to type that in when someone tries to get a hold of you. But the difference essentially is Omniscient Safety Innovations is the consultancy and training side of the organization in reality. They're separate businesses, but Omniscient Safety Innovations does consultancy and training around mental health in the workplace, mental harm prevention, psychological safety, neurodiversity, whereas Chamelli is a software AI system that's built on all of that knowledge, training, and intelligence. So Chamelli is about making mental health, which remains invisible in most workplaces, really visible to the business, so the business can make intelligent decisions based off that. And the most intelligent decision based off that would be to get Omniscient Safety Innovations in to then help you with the training and consultancy, right?
Clearly, and just to show that we're all batting for the same side here, I'm rocking the company. I'm rocking the company logo. I'm keeping it real. So OSI, hands-on, in there, training, coaching, educating, informing, and all of that. And Chamelli is the software AI system that can be put in place in conjunction with that, after it, during it, whatever, to support it all in an ongoing basis, right? In real layman's terms.
Yeah, absolutely. That probably explained it far better than I do, and it makes probably more sense coming from you. So yeah,
I did some research. the history of mental health goes as far back as written records, and perhaps took it. And if my eyes are shifting to the side, it's definitely that I'm not reading this off my OneNote, right? It took its first major leap forward in 400 BC when Greek physician Hippocrates began to treat mental illness as psychological diseases rather than evidence of demonic possession or a displeasure of the gods.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
he's on it. Let me tell you.
As they had previously believed to be, that people that were of a certain ilk had displeasure from the gods or demonic possession. Asylums for the mentally ill were established as early as the 8th century by Muslim Arabs.
Yeah.
The question is, Brett Townsley, have we moved on?
Well, I think many places would still argue that it's demonic possession that drives some of the symptoms and behaviour. I mean, I think if you think about the reality of it, what people see in terms of a physical illness is signs of that illness. So, somebody being sick, somebody shaking, whatever it may be. And we accept that and say, well, those are uncontrollable symptoms of an illness. We
Right.
don't look at them and say, you shouldn't be doing that. You're being possessed. Or whereas if somebody has a mental health illness and they display symptoms, whether it's, and I guess, depression would be a good one, or PTSD, displaying signs of that, angry outbursts, changes in behavior, isolation, low moods, all of those things, we automatically go, they're either putting this on, or actually, it's all fakery, it's not real, or something has got a hold of them, a demon. So we judge it in two entirely different perspectives, and I think that's essentially one of the main core problems with mental health in today's society.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, just a quick word to any of our lovely viewers out there. We do have viewers, which is nice.
Good.
I've put the chat overlay off, but if you've got a question for Brett or a comment or want to just explore a wee bit further, by all means, put it in the chat and we'll put it up on the screen and let Brett have a chance to respond. This is we're all in this together. It's sort of live and interactive. So I think I remember, if I'm right, probably the early 2000s, when I first heard. Now I had an industrial health and safety background, but it was very practical, and it was very much the regulations, safe ways of working, procedures, methods, incident reporting, and of course all of the tools. Hi John, hi Andrew, good to have you with us. I think the first indicator that I got was maybe in the early 2000s when I heard from the company I was working for that there was people being put through mental health first aider training when all that started coming out, right?
Yeah.
And I attended one of those sessions and probably left more confused than when I went in, because, mental health, I was born in 1971. So I grew up in a time where you don't talk about any of that stuff. You keep your feelings to yourself, you get on with it. People just have down days, but we've heard these ridiculous statements our whole lives. They've been sort of battered into as man up, pull yourself together. What's the matter with you? Just get on with it. It's absolutely fine. And the whole issue of now an organisation struggling with the concept of how people are feeling, what's going on in people's heads. It was a bit clumsy. It was a bit rudimental. It was trying to apply sticky plasters and safety, workplace safety things to a very complex issue. We've come so far. I guess my question is: have we hit this at the pace that it needs to be hit at, and are we hitting it with the gravity it needs to be hit at? Are companies now in a completely different space with understanding of all of this?
Well, I don't. So to be brutally honest, I think as a society through the COVID experience, eyes have changed, perception has slightly changed. I don't think we're at any point managing, dealing with, or really understanding mental health, particularly in the workplace. I think one of the most common misconceptions is you're either really healthy in terms of well-being, it's all fantastic, or you're mentally ill. There's a whole variety of places in between those two that you can visit, and you can do it on a regular basis. You can drop in and out of those, moment to moment, hour to hour. It's when you cross over the threshold from normal deviations in ongoing mental health on a regular basis into conditions or illnesses. Again, misconception, a misunderstanding, or a common belief is that 1 in 4 people go to the doctor with a mental health illness, which is the right numbers. But actually underlying that is 1 in 6 people go with a common condition. So there are differences between a diagnosable mental health illness and a common mental health condition. If you experience
just go back over that again, because
Sure.
that's news to I love these, because when you speak to specialists you learn so much stuff. So just go over those two again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So, well, think of it in these terms. You can be someone who has excellent levels of well-being. Fantastic. You go to the gym, you eat right, you give to charity, you do all the 5 things of well-being. Inside the organization that you work for, they focus on well-being because everybody has a well-being policy or a well-being process, plan, structure, whatever it may be. You go to work, you do all those 5 things, and you go, that means my mental health will always be good because I've got good well-being. When in actual fact, you could have a common condition for mental health at the exact same time as having fantastic well-being. So the guy who goes to the gym, eats right, exercises, does all the good stuff, still goes through clinical depression or the experience of clinical depression because when he loses a loved one, loses his job, or goes through divorce, he will enter into the process, which we all know in common terms of grieving, and you'll enter into all the experiences that you would have if you had clinical depression. So now you have a common experience. So you've got a common condition for mental health. That doesn't mean to say that you need to get, electrodes stuck to your head and, demons and an exorcism done. But it means in a short-term phase, what you're going to encounter are all the things that you would encounter if you had a clinical illness. So now all the behaviors will also come into play. The changes in the way you do things, your more angry outbursts, sadness, the isolating yourself. You'll do all the exact same things that you would have done if you had a clinical mental health illness. Now imagine your workplace where you've got that entire workforce who are experiencing all of these things that will trigger it, just as Grant popped in and said, that will trigger these conditions, and it changes your workplace. So now out of your 30 people, 25 are experiencing conditions or illnesses that are making them less effective, making them take time off work, making them have aggravated relationships with peers. All of that impacts your workplace. And why is it important? Because there is nobody on the planet who doesn't have mental health, just like nobody on the planet doesn't have physical health. So it's your workforce, it's my workforce, it's you, it's me, it's everybody.
Wow. Thinking back to when I was in sort of occupational health and safety, one of the things that I considered myself a bit of a specialist in was incident investigation, right?
Yeah.
And I loved it when I went to a company and I said, can I have a look at our process and all of that? And there's always a form. And on the form, there's the root causes and the underlying causes and all of this. And looking back, in my development, I never questioned it. And I did question it once. And the argument that ensued was just not worth pursuing because it was just going to lead to knockdown dragouts. But the box that just closed everything off, user error, operator error. Right, so we would go through, and I know that you're a safety professional as well. You've done your time in that as well. You would go through your process, gathering evidence, interviewing people, looking at all the stuff, looking up all the specs of all the kit that went wrong, and blah blah blah. And you just get down to that point where we realise that the guy or the girl, the person made a mistake, a slip, or a lapse, something like that, and we'd put it down as it just happened, and we don't really know why. They just did it. Now I started to think that's particularly interesting when you find yourself investigating an incident with the golden employee, the 25-year experienced person who's the one you go to, who's just brilliant, methodical, follows the process all the time. The gold standard, never had an incident, never caused an incident. Their work quality is fantastic, but something just went wrong. But I remember thinking, there's something more to this, but I don't have the skills or the understanding to go, so Joanne, what happened? I don't know. But you've done this a million times. Yeah, I have. But I know not to put it there, but I put it there. It just happened, and I don't really know why. I'm guessing that many instances occurred where there was exactly what you're talking about, that underlying cause that I either didn't feel competent to or never had the skills to get out. So we just boxed it off as operator error. Everybody's happy, a bit more retraining. Woohoo! Everyone's
Yeah.
good. But behind that was more than likely, why was there a mistake, a slips and a lapse?
Yeah.
But there wasn't a box to say, John or Joanne's going through a tough divorce right now and they're clinically depressed.
And so I know that you're a safety guy, and I know that you know this stuff. So I totally understand where you're coming from, Eric. And I think you're right. So when we do root cause analysis, 5 whys, whatever you want to do, well, there has to be a point when you get back to operator error, didn't read the process, didn't read the procedure, didn't understand it, whatever the conclusion is there, to go, well, why? And we know that cognitive function is affected by mental health. So when you enter into those common types of conditions, and again, PTSD is a really common thing that people are triggered by. And when people have PTSD, their cognitive function starts to slow down. It starts to shut down. So the simple things you would do, such as thinking a process through, making rational decisions becomes much harder. Thinking complex processes out, understanding information becomes difficult. So sometimes what you hear is different to what's being said because your brain is not processing the information. Depression, when someone enters into depression, we know that cognitive function is affected by up to 35%. So again, you've got the golden goose.
35% of your ability to make decisions, cognitively decide on yes, no, maybe, left, right, up, down, is affected.
Yeah, even in stress situations, right? Cognitive function changes in stress environments. So stress is a good thing for us because stress helps us to, speed up, defend ourselves, throw punches, whatever you need to do to survive, right? The adrenaline that's pumped in. But actually cognitive function starts to get slowed down by it. So simple thinking out processes becomes much more complex for people. So a task that maybe took 15 minutes previously is now taking an hour 45. And the boss is knocking on the door and saying, well, why? It's because you're not working hard enough or you're not good enough. Now, if the boss can ask the why, when we're investigating it, why can't we? Why can't we say, well, why was he affected? Why did he change? Why did that accident happen? Well, he hit his hand with a hammer. Again, we know that physical ability can be impaired by things such as depression, PTSD, and other types of mental health difficulties, and up to about 25%. So I'm hitting the hammer against the wall. I do it competently on a regular basis. I have no issue with that. But suddenly I enter into a common condition where I'm experiencing mental health difficulties. I try to hit the hammer. I hit my thumb. I go to the boss. It's bleeding. We do first aid, all of the good stuff. We investigate and we say, well, it's your fault. You didn't follow the process properly. I don't know why I didn't follow the process properly. Well, my cognitive function was impaired because of the circumstances that are happening. So, if it was a police investigation, mindset or capability would be one of the first things they'd look at. The DVLA requires that you legally report anxiety if you experience it. Why? Because they know anxiety affects cognitive function while driving. So your ability to think clearly and drive is impaired if you suffer from anxiety. Do we think about that at work? The guy behind the forklift, behind the crane, flying the helicopter, driving the bus? No, right? So when we're thinking about things, we need to understand actually there is a reason behind mental. There's a reason why we know it is a risk that needs to be managed. And it's a risk that needs to be managed because every single one of us has it.
So are we saying that the key to not getting to the bottom of all this, but actually putting the right amount of focus on this relies on people feeling safe enough in a culture to be able to say, and also to be able to spot it in their colleagues and feel safe enough to be able to say, hey, listen, I think we should probably take a wee break here and maybe go and talk to someone. That's not Joe average company, is it?
No. And again, I think, it's society, it's culturally. When you have we have toxic positivity cultures that, again, good example, the chap knocks on the door of the OIM's office and says, offshore installation manager, and says, I'm feeling really anxious about doing this job. I've never felt this way before. I'm new to this environment. I'm not sleeping. I'm having difficulty concentrating. And the OIM says what he believes to be the right thing, because again, that's the society and what culture tells us. Don't worry about it. Go to bed, sleep on it. Tomorrow's a bright new day. So he's thinking, I'm doing the right thing. I am supporting the individual. I'm saying it's going to be okay. Get to your bed, have a sleep. Slap yourself in the face in the morning and say, I've got this. I'm an offshore tiger. I'm a warrior, right? But actually, if the person's experiencing an illness or condition, they have no control over that. So they can't simply switch that by saying, well, I'm going to have a better mindset, because it's an actual illness or condition. It's the same as if somebody had something such as polio or diabetes or cancer or any other type of physical illness. If I simply said to you, don't worry about it, go to bed tonight, sleep on it, and tomorrow it will be gone, it won't go. You need to get medical intervention, right? You need to get treatment, you need to get supported. So the way we think about it causes us our own difficulties in how we manage it. We don't want it to be visible in the workplace, because if we make it visible, are we responsible for it? Now, if somebody has something going on, is this all about we're to blame?
Yeah.
But again, as a safety professional, you know that it's not about removing all of the potential harm or risk. It's about managing it. So if I have something in place that can manage the likelihood of anyone getting hurt, reduce the potential risk to people, I'm doing the right thing. If I ignore it and somebody gets hurt, I am responsible. I didn't put any barriers in place. So again, we need to change the way we think about mental health as what it is, but also as how we manage it in our workplace.
Your last couple of minutes there just reminded me of a phrase that I heard many years ago. I don't think I fully understood it until more recently. No matter where I go in the world, there I am.
Yeah.
So the holiday's not going to change it.
No.
Take a couple of days off and sort yourself out. It's not going to change it.
No. The concept of well-being days is just a day off, right? This idea that, I'll take a well-being day, and that means that the business is looking after me. Well, actually, they're not. They're just giving you a day off from the potential difficulties that you're going to encounter. The moment you go back into work and those risks stay the exact same and they have managed nothing, they're putting you right back in the firing line for harm. So again, time away from a safety risk or a hazard and returning to it is not fixing anything. It's just going right back into the same environment that's harmful. So it's a different outlook to how we need to start thinking about it to make real fundamental change.
How much in your research and your study and how you've been immersed in this for so long now? When did you start out in this seriously?
About 5 years ago. Yeah.
About 5 years. 5 years worth of immersion in this. The whole issue of, so we take in someone like Omniscient, and we do some training. We now have a greater understanding of triggers and things to look out for. But there's also, so what we're going to do about it once we identify it. So there's it's very open. People are talking about mental health in the workplace. How much in your studies and research is actually linking work activities and work exposure to the sort of end contributing factor, or is it just part of a whole life mix, or is work standing out as a thing in research and studies?
Well, work absolutely stands out. But again, in context, what we have to remember is we're spending practically half our lives in work anyway. So it is a life thing. But again, the reality of it is, the HSE have now picked up on this. The Health and Safety Executive are pushing the stress regulations forward. Psychological safety has come to the fore. All of these different things that we've been talking about for years suddenly have become important, and people are hearing it and saying, well, we need to do something about it. I have a little girl, this, Eric, right? I do not want her to grow up and end up working in an organization that thinks it is okay to simply break someone through excessive pressures and then move somebody else into that seat. Because legally, morally, and financially, it's not acceptable. It costs the business because of all the costs involved in retraining somebody, hiring somebody, all those types of things. But on top of that, there's a legal and moral duty to protect your workforce. And what gets lost in that is treatment is not protection. Treatment is something you do when somebody is already experiencing the difficulty. So you mentioned it at the start, mental health first aid. First aid can't be applied until there is aid required. So you cannot give somebody aid unless they're in distress. They have to already be there. You should be preventing them from ever getting to the point where they require first aid. And I'm not saying mental health first aid is a bad thing. I think that every organization should be doing that in terms of mental health, but they shouldn't be doing it in isolation. And that's what many organizations do, is in isolation. They use it as a mechanism to say, tick box, we are doing the mental health stuff, but it's reliant upon people finally getting to the point where they say, I can't cope anymore, help me. And that's too late.
That's too late. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you talk about the excessive work pressures and all of that, I remember not too long ago, a CEO came down to my office and said, one of your guys, he's incredible. He's the benchmark employee in this company. You know, that car park's empty at 5:10 at night, but that boy's here till 8 o'clock most nights, and he's in at weekends. That is what we need more of in this company. We need more of that. It turned out that this person was actually struggling at home, struggling with their workload, not being able to concentrate enough to be able to complete what they had to do during the day. So we're actually chasing their tails most nights, worrying themselves that they were going to get fired, although there was no threats of anybody getting made redundant. Because of their state of mind, they were seeing all these ghosts and shadows that didn't really exist, and actually ended up having a breakdown and leaving the business due to mental ill health that they were never able to fully recover from, because it got to that point where there was so much, and exactly as you said, the building had burnt all the way down to the ground, and actually there could have been fires that were put out on different floors at different times, right?
Yeah.
But there's the mindset. That is what we need more of in this company, is that. I mean, whether that sounds a bit like Victorian boss, but a huge swathe of businesses still believe that the more people are running themselves ragged, it's the better for us.
Yeah. Well, again, so expectation, the expectation that a business and organization we set on each other, and that's where Chamelli comes into it, because Chamelli is simply a play on the word chameleon, and it's the chameleon effect. When I go to work, maybe not in this business, but previously when I went to work, there would be subconscious expectations set upon me. Your job is 8 till 5, whatever, but everybody else is coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning, so you want to be the first one in. Right, I'll be there at 5:58 on the dot, and I will be sat there just waiting for the boss to walk in to go, hey, I'm here, look at me, I'm the best one, look at me go.
Yep.
So we set these expectations on ourselves, and then, you know, I'm not leaving until the next person leaves, I'm not leaving until the boss is gone. But those expectations are unrealistic and they're unhealthy. So we subconsciously set that, and what we look for are those behaviors reflected back to us. The boss does it, therefore everyone else around has to follow suit. The boss walks in and says, good morning, everyone. You all fine? You're not going to say, actually, boss, hold up. I'm having a mental health condition or a crisis here. Could you please stop? What you're going to go is, yeah, I'm great. Everything is tip top. And the boss then only sees a room full of very happy workforce. He doesn't see the people being stretched, expanded, crushed by the excessive pressure and expectation placed on them. So in order to make it really visible, we have to break down that effect. We have to stop people from reflecting back what those expectations are. They need to be authentic and honest. And if you can demonstrate that to a business, no reasonable person is going to then continue to apply pressure to someone. They're going to say, right, how do we manage this? How do we reduce this pressure on the individual and save them from getting there? So, yeah. And I think historically, Eric, what you talk about historically is true as well. You know, prohibition times, they used to prescribe alcohol for nervous system conditions. So stress, anxiety, you could, even when alcohol was illegal, you could still go to a doctor, get a prescription, go downstairs into the bar and get a shot of whiskey for the day to make your nerves calm. Now, we're not dealing with an issue there. You're medicating it. You're applying alcohol to numb the illness. And that's typically what we do rather than deal with the root causes.
My goodness, how we've evolved, and we have so much evolution to do. So there must be, and this is a question rather than an opinion of mine, it's a question. Given the fact that this is such an unexplored and ununderstood topic, because we're getting into social upbringing, psychology, all sorts of deep and personal things, right? You must come across leadership teams who are thinking, we're just going to open up a can of worms here and nobody's going to be working.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be off. Everybody's going to be off. Everybody who slightly flashes in on that meter of anxiety or can't, and we're just going to shut down. You must come across a bit of fear about what is this going to do for us.
Yeah. So I've been called, which is probably one of my better qualities. I've been called naive when it comes to this, right?
Right.
Presented to organizations and, well, this is naive because then everybody's going to claim they are stressed. And then we're, as you say, operation shuts down, we can't do anything. Now, am I naive? Well, maybe a little bit. I mean, I do think that...
Pioneers and change makers usually are called naive. Well,
pioneer, change maker, innovator, all these words I was terrified of when I first heard people said them. So I was thinking, I'm none of those things, But the reality is this, Eric. You are not managing a workforce to all be anxiety-free. You're not managing a workforce to all be stress-free. We know stress exists. We know anxiety exists. We know mental health changes exist. But what you're doing is you're managing the risk of it developing into mental health conditions or illnesses to the point where that person cannot function. And before they get to that place, you're identifying the right types of supports to prevent it. Rather than, we're going to deny it exists, even though we all know stress exists, we're going to deny it. And then when somebody gets to that point where they're working 14 hours a day, every day for 7 days, and finally says, boom, I'm done, it's too late. That person simply gets sent to our employee assistance program where they get treatment, therapy, which again is required. And I'm, not knocking that, but actually, as you say, if we'd have looked at the work pattern of the individual and seen the changes way in advance, we could have intervened successfully and prevented him from ever getting to the point where he blew up and left. And the business loses when that happens. And that's the bit that I think they struggle with at times. Yeah. All of those costs in terms of 17.9 million lost work days, 42 billion in wasted economically, people taking sick days off, people not wanting to come into work, all of these different types of things, people under productivity inside the business. All of that changes if you're preventing the things that cause them to go that way. So prevention is far better than treatment of the condition, the illness.
And another little dichotomy, which I find quite interesting. So way further into it, when in the early 2000s, exposed to mental health first aid training, and then running organizations and trying to deal with this issue. I found it quite funny one day. I looked in the mirror and I'd realized that the board that I was working for at that time had put a system in place. It was a tick box exercise. Mental health, we'll put an EAP program in, we'll do casual close Friday, and we'll order pizza every second Friday, and that'll fix mental health, won't it?
Yeah.
That'll be it. It'll be fine. But then I realized that there's a funny little dichotomy here, that I came across a couple of leadership teams that think that this is for the workforce.
Yeah.
It's actually so crucial for them as well.
Yeah.
But you think this is something for them.
So nobody really recognizes mental health, right, until you've had a mental health experience, right? Because you're the chosen few who have never encountered it. But actually, statistically, most people into their 40s, so our age group, Eric.
That ship has sailed, my friend.
Well, okay, you sailed through the waters then. So the waters of 40, into those age brackets is when people more commonly experience common types of mental health conditions, because you're going to be setting sail into the age bracket where people do break up, people are married and lose their partners, people do have, losses of loved ones, people do lose their jobs, technology comes
The
in.
kids are at an age where they might fall out with you and leave home.
Exactly,
You're
all
in
of the above, right?
all of the above, yeah.
So that age bracket is more commonly experiences these types of things. But if you're in the younger bracket, or perhaps someone who sailed through that successfully and didn't encounter a common mental health condition, you're far more likely to say, well, this is irrelevant to me because it doesn't affect me. I have the big car, I have the money, I have the house, I haven't been hit by those impacts. But the reality is, no one escapes this life, this world, without experiencing mental health. The moment you wake up in the morning, it is happening to you. The moment you go to bed, it is happening to you. It's just that you're sitting in a pool of healthier mental health experiences than those others. So recognizing that it's not just workforce, it's leadership that can encounter this as well. And when they do, the impact can ripple down into the business. Mental health is also something that flows out the way, right? So people with things such as SAD, seasonal affective disorders, they are more common in people who have actually got someone in their close network, whether it's family member or a close friend, that has a pre-existing mental health illness or condition.
Wow.
So the chances are someone in your family experiencing negative mental health, the way that the symptoms unfold affects you, because whether it's, and again, PTSD, a good example. PTSD creates angry outbursts. People struggle to deal with angry emotions. So angry outbursts to relatives, family members around them, starts to impact that individual's mental health and shifts them into a negative space. Now they encounter a mental health condition. Now the symptoms of their mental health condition flow out the way and impact those around them. So in your team of 6 people at work, with one with a mental health illness or condition, and that effect rippling out, the symptoms, the changes in behavior, attitudes, or emotions can affect others in the team. So strategically, you need to be thinking about, a drop of water into a large pool. If we have 2 or 3 people in the business who experience negative mental health issues, illnesses, or conditions, that can ripple out and affect the rest of the team as well.
Once you've been in, and your team have been in, and trained everyone, given everyone all the sort of the in-depth background and put processes in place, maybe got Chamelli in. How does if I was to walk into the company a year before you had been in to do that, right? And a year before this company decided to tackle this head on and do it pretty seriously, what would be the kind of things that you would feel the difference in? How would, a year before and a year into taking it seriously, what are the typical things that you would see are happening and experiencing different in the culture of that organization?
Well, again, I think culturally, in terms of how people talk, the language, we try to change. Well, change is not the right word. We try to make sure that people understand the language of mental health. As I mentioned, mental health is a consistent experience that you're going through. Mental health illness is something different. Mental health condition is something different, and a mental health incident, an experience. There are few brackets that anyone can ever really enter into at the end. An illness, a condition, short-term exposure that doesn't really affect you.
Yep.
Or you sail through it, right? Mental health is different for each individual, but the outcomes are not going to change much. So again, it's about putting a process in place and monitoring our leading and lagging indicators, if you like, in terms of a safety approach. The likelihood is what we're going to see is an upsurge to begin with in terms of people, and we have, in terms of people talking about reporting stress, depression. But then we can start to see the dip in those indicators, right? So that those key performance indicators are going to change over a period of time, because what we'll start to see is actually once people understand the difference and whether they're sitting in specific brackets, they'll know effectively, but they'll also learn themselves how to reach for the appropriate types of resources. So less people being off work, productivity increasing, all of the good indicators. But I think in terms of initially, what we see right now with the organizations we're working with is an increase in reporting.
An increase in reporting initially, which might fear some leaders that we're going to be back in the sort of dark ages of health and safety or safety management, where we the HSE are all over us. We need to get our clients are all over us. We need to get safety systems in place, processes and reporting tools. Oh my God, we've got so much reporting going on. Now that we've trained these people, now that they know what to look out for, it's just a constant barrage of that's not safe, this needs to get fixed.
Yeah.
And we're trying to create this culture of openness, but the openness means more reporting. Oh my God, what are we going to do? But that's a natural part of the cycle, right?
Yeah. So like any good, and we'll use physical safety because it's far easier for people to understand. But any good physical safety management system, there is an increase in what some people might class as negative reporting, but actually it's what I want to see, right, as a safety professional. I want you to tell me where it's wrong so that I can fix it, so that the next time you go back there, it doesn't exist anymore. That hazard is gone, right? Or we've put some kind of barrier in place. So it's about understanding that you need the negative data, if you like. You need the reporting to tell us where to make the intelligent decisions. And without that, all we're going to do is continue to sweep it under the rug. Piper Alpha, great example. Safety systems offshore were not good enough. A major incident happens. Then we stop and say, well, actually, these were things that we did know, we just avoided. But now we're going to put them in place. So once they've been put in place, the risk is minimized. And that's essentially what we're doing. And in terms of the HSE, as you well know, the HSE come out for inspection. If you can demonstrate that you have a systemic approach in place that reduces or minimizes the risk, tick, you're doing all the right things. But if I knocked on your door and said, well, 5 people have reported stress to the HSE, that you guys are creating stress, what do you do about it? And you said, well, Mr. HSE, we have a system in place that when someone gets ill, they get treated. Well, I'd be saying to you, yeah, and what do you do about the risk of them getting ill? How do you prevent that from it? Well, we don't. We just wait until they're ill, and then the moment they get ill, this cool employee assistance program kicks in, and they're going to get treated, and they're depressed.
Which, if I'm hearing you right now, I've learned something, because I struggle to physical safety and mental safety. If I'm hearing you right, it's exactly the same as, well, Mr. HSE, we have a system in place that if someone gets their arm chopped off, we investigate it and we prevent that from happening again.
Exactly. So you're not any physical safety accident, as you know, that is investigated. What they need to find is evidence from you that you did everything to prevent it.
Yep.
If it goes wrong, even if you've got all the barriers in place, the HSE, well, you did all the right things, right? And I'm not saying that that's acceptable, but it's about building a structure that does all of the right things up front to reduce or minimize the likelihood of it happening. Whereas with mental health, we don't do that, right? We wait until they become ill, and then the moment they become ill, we activate. We jump in and say, right, I'm going to get you to our EAP program where you've got 6 counselling sessions and da-da-da-da-da. But again, at that stage, they're already hurt. So aid is applied. And when aid is applied, you have to be in distress. You can't get aid unless you're in distress. So you wouldn't rush in with a plaster and stick it on somebody's finger if there wasn't a cut. You wouldn't stitch somebody's big toe back on unless it was detached, right?
Right.
You wouldn't fix somebody's mind unless it was already experiencing difficulties, right? So again, it's prevention versus reaction, and I think it's at times a complex concept to wrap your head around.
It is. It's so full of many different angles and attributes. It's incredible. We'll just take a few minutes just to catch up on some of the chat here that's going on. I'll put the chat overlay back on and bring these back in. Let me see. In fact, I don't need to do that now that I've done that. John Curry. John says, Brett, when do you think society will take mental health seriously as a whole rather than the few?
Well, that's why I'm so immersed in it, right? That's why I'm drowning in it, John.
Yeah.
COVID was a great door opener, I think, for a lot of people. But we still need to get our head concept, prevention rather than reaction. And I think that's going to take a long time. Even when I listen to politicians on the TV and TV shows, I can hear them talking about what they think is prevention in a reactive way. And that's after the event. So we need to change that.
I think when I put these on, your video goes a bit dodgy. I think maybe it's just too much for your interweb to cope, but I'll put them up for a second. Andrew says, I'll read them out. Andrew says, if someone turned up to work drunk, impaired, you would not let them do any work. So why is it safe, in inverted commas, to allow people to use heavy machinery when they're mentally impaired and not in the right frame of mind to work? So anything we can do to put mechanisms in place to identify that and deal with it in an adult and mature and sensitive way has got to be a good thing. Grant says, a day off is nothing more than time to let it grind on you. You have to seek help and find out what's making you feel this way to tackle it, of course. John says, people are very good at... John Bloomfield, hi John, good to have you with us. People are very good at pulling on the mask and carrying on as usual. Because it's the way I think maybe, in speaking to my son, they're already tackling this at university in year one. Okay. They're already talking about this in year one. That's fantastic. I think I was born in 71. The first thing I ever heard about it was in the early 2000s at work, right? So I mean, already they're talking. They're not training in it, but they're discussing it already and get it. Amazing, right? Yeah. So maybe some of those masks can come off. Andrew's agreeing that masks. People put masks on every day to hide their true feelings. Yes, of course. Yeah. Tony's asked the word. How do you measure success? So we'll come to that towards the end. Matt Smith saying Capricorn rolled out mental health first aid across our HSEC function to provide them with the tools to identify if others are struggling, a change in routine, habits or manners, and the ALO approach. Good stuff. Yeah. And Wendy says, great conversation, guys. I wish more people in organisation would listen to your message, Brett. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely incredible. It's just I don't want to say the word minefield because it's not a minefield. On your, I was very interested to hear, you mentioned the stress regulations and things like that, and HSE are now looking for what mechanisms do you have in place. Has there been any enforcement action on poor management of workplace mental health?
Well, so out in Australia, there's actually just been a case for a payout for £1 million for a psychological safety incident at work. So wow. Out in Australia are
they're
definitely
kicking doors down, aren't they?
Yeah, they're definitely way ahead of us in terms of understanding and approaching this. But also in the UK, there has been. So I know of when an organisation is informed. So there's lots of legislation beyond the HSE, but when an organisation is informed of someone who has mental health illness, condition, is impaired in some sort of way, there has to be reasonable adjustments assessment created around the individual in the workplace. So can I reassess and make reasonable adjustments to it to enable them to continue to work, and work successfully? So there was a recent case where a receptionist was paid out £50,000 in damages because she noted, and this was in the UK, she notified the organisation that she works for that she was experiencing anxiety. She was on medication, and again, depending how long you're on medication, the types of medication, the type of illness, you may well fall into disability and therefore diversity, inclusion, all of these areas. So it's not just simply legislation from the HSE. However, I do know that the HSE are actively out there looking at stress regulations and how we're managing it in the energy sector. I've spoken to a few HSE people that I know about it, and it's as hot a topic for them as it is for anyone else. But again, I think the difficulty is very often they are approaching organisations and having to go through the same types of things that we do in terms of simply having an EAP or a last resort approach is not suitable and sufficient for minimising the risk.
I'm just sharing stories with you. I remember sitting around a conference room with a leadership team where the CEO said, right, this whole employee assistance thing and all that, we need to get more fun into this organisation. I want to write a procedure for fun.
Yeah.
A procedure for fun. And I thought, we need to write a procedure for fun? Yeah, we need to define it, and we need to put KPIs in place for fun, because that's a big part of this. So we need to develop this fun procedure. I was like, oh, maybe we can talk about this offline, because I don't think we need a procedure for fun.
Fine. No.
Fun. I think it's a bit runs a bit deeper than that. So you're working with big clients, medium-sized clients, small clients, helping them with all of this to put arms around this, get that level of understanding, get the process in place, get the culture kind of fixed. You must have learnt a lot in 5 years.
Oh,
With when you started out, you had an idea of what this might be, but you've been swimming slash drowning, immersed in this for a long time. What are the kind of learnings that you've gathered over the last 5 years?
well, I guess the first one is just on what you said there, right? The happy policy. Many companies that I talk to think that's what it's about. If I can make everyone smile in my business, then that's it, problem is solved, right? But the reality is everyone will smile in your business if you tell them to smile in your business. That doesn't mean that they are not experiencing mental. Yeah. So again, I encounter that quite a bit. The reality is that, I came into this going, I want to make a change. I want to improve. As I said to you, my goal was always to make this a better place for my daughter, and that still remains my goal. I have learned along this journey that I don't know all of these different types of running a business, starting a business. It seems like an easy idea at the time, right? I'm going to go to launch my business, put the name up, get
I'm going to
the
go away.
email.
I'm going to train. I'm going to run back into the centre of my
That's
industry
it.
and go. I have the answers, and
Yeah, I'm going to be standing there in the middle, and suddenly everybody's going to go, "You're absolutely right. Mental health is vitally important. We need to do something about it." But strangely enough, that doesn't happen. Shocker, right? So, I've learned that actually having people, and I'm good at knowing my limitations. I'm good at knowing where somebody else is better at that than me. So I'm good at that. But I think when you first start in business, you're kind of forced to begin with to be the everybody. You're forced to be the
yep.
everything. You're forced to be the marketing. You're forced to be, and you have to learn on the job in each of these things. And what I've learned from that is, I'm not a marketing person. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a business development person. I'm not a. That's what I've learned. I know where I'm good. I know what I do well, but I know that having talented, skilled people in the positions around me that can challenge me as well, because there's no point in having people around you just go. I said this to you before we came in. If I was just to ask myself on a regular basis, I'd permanently be saying, "Yes, Brett, just go for it. Go do that. That'll work. It's a great plan." You need people around you who are saying, "Hold on, there's a better way to do that. There's a smarter way to do that, or actually, there's no point in doing that at all." And I think that's what I've learned in this journey. And I've also learned about my own mental health. The more I dive into this, the more studies we do with universities, and I've learned about my own types of behaviors and the things I do to help myself cope in challenging environments, challenging situations, and I've
So
learned about.
it's not like the cobbler's shoes. You're not out preaching all this stuff and training all these people, then getting home and sitting with a bottle of whiskey in your pants, watching Scandi Noir, crying.
No, no. Well, yeah, that does happen on a Saturday night,
Well,
but
that's Saturday.
well,
Saturday.
but the I practice what I preach, right? Chamelli, and we've got a team of people here, and we've got a young student, I think, joining us quite soon again.
Oh, great.
We're gonna look after him, and it's not about simply having a procedure in place and saying, right, this da 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 and tick, that's all going to work. I know that mental health affects everyone differently, but within that, the outcomes are going to be very similar. So how do I give the people around me the right care, respect, responsibility to help them be successful, but also to keep me on check, keep me balanced as well, because I'm susceptible as anyone else is to,
Oh my goodness, yeah. I know my primary four report card from Mrs. Borland. I know this because I photographed it. I found it in the garage. Eric works well in groups, not so well in his own. I am one of the guys, I'll put my hand up, that working from home all the time
yeah,
doesn't work for me. I need to be with people. I get energy from people. I get light and color and that energy from people. And if that's taken away from me, and it's like, Sarah's away at work all day. I'm here on my own all day. Now I get to meet people on a screen. That's great. I get a little bit back, but I'm one of those people that I need to be around people. I get energy and light and color from people. And I find myself, if I've had like an entire week where I've been coaching, I've been on courses, doing whatever I'm doing on the screens, I find myself on a Friday night, well, Sarah will say, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just feel really down."
Yeah.
I just feel really down, and I don't know what the answer is.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong. Emotions are normal experiences. It's okay to feel sad, angry, isolated. It's okay to feel those. But when it starts to change you so significantly that you can't manage it, it becomes unhealthy, that's a problem, right? But yeah, look, I am, which you can probably tell, I'm enthusiastic, I'm driven, and I'm ambitious for change. I'm not necessarily ambitious in terms of personal success, but I know that my personal success is tied into change within society and the industry. So I'm tied into that ambition. And sometimes that can cloud my vision around everyday things,
White line fever. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I recognize that that's one of the things that I need to keep a tab on as well, because, I don't want my vision to knock other people over as I'm running for the goal line,
Totally. And that's a very, very sensitive approach. Brett, in closing, it's been an hour. That's been the best part of an hour. Can you believe that?
Holy smoke, yeah.
Holy smoke, yeah, exactly.
Once you get me babbling, that's it.
Absolutely. You're the brilliant guest, because you just wind you up and point you in the direction. As I say to everyone that comes on the Crux Cast, the very worst that you could do to me is when I ask you a question, you say, yes.
Yeah. Well, I won't ever do that. That's one thing I can't do.
Brett, as with everything that's building traction in industry, in commerce, in our own domestic lives, the fact that mental health is all over the news, it's in the street, it's in everywhere, it's on social media. People now happy to talk about it and happy to accept it as a thing. Well, the majority of the population, I would say, are happy to accept it as a real thing. The sort of lid's off now, and we're happy to discuss it. As with everything, there's progress coming and there's things coming down the line. What are the exciting advancements that we might hope to see in mental health, whether it's domestically or in the workplace or whatever? What do you see as a person who's a specialist in this? What's coming?
Well, Chamelli, right? Chamelli is coming.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it is. Systemic approaches that recognize an individual's experience. So as you said, that you're someone who likes to work in the light with lots of people and engagement. And so now we know that's how to draw out your best qualities. We know that's what makes you most effective. We know that's what's going to cause you the least harm. We're going to build safe spaces around you specifically for that. And through that, we're going to be able to educate the business on that's why it works for this group of people. And this is what works for the next group of people. And in doing that, again, what you can make is those intelligent decisions that remove, reduce, or prevent that hazard for people like you, for people like me, for people like, and that's what's coming. We're working on a junior version at the moment, so we're working on a kids version. I
really?
certainly see, yeah. I see. I told you, I see toy brands ahead of me. I see, the Chamelli is a toy that has specific functions that can be used for juniors, young children, and it ties into all the other AI and systemic approaches that we use. And again, so parents will have a greater understanding of their child's mental health from day dot all the way through, not intrusively, but to the point where I can see the changes and therefore interact and safeguard against dangerous changes or help to build good changes into their mental health. So yeah, there's lots of things we're working on in the background. We've RGU, Bath University, we've worked with loads of different partners on these things and some exciting things in the future. I think the reality is, hopefully in the next 4 or 5 years, there will be less chameleons and more chameleons visible in our workplaces. When you go offshore, you will automatically join into the chameleon system, and your mental health will be catered for specifically around you, rather than, here's that off-the-shelf thing that you must do. You've got to do these 5 well-being things, and that's going to make you okay. Well, it's not. So
it's not. Exactly. The hour is now. We're now at the top of the hour. I can't believe it, because it feels as if it's just been a couple of minutes. Let's just catch up with our lovely viewers. Let me see. Mark, I think that's Adefunke's husband. One of the nicest people I've ever met. So I'm thinking that Mark must be one of the nicest people I've yet to meet. Having attended therapy sessions myself, learning about yourself and what triggers your behaviours and hope to deal with situations has been so useful. Absolutely, Mark, without a doubt. Hey, we've done some good today. Well, you have, right? If nothing good comes out of this little hour, look at this from Tony. Great call, guys. I've just added mental health training to my personal development plan. That's a win.
And yeah, absolutely, and a great guy as well. Tony's a top bloke, so
absolutely brilliant.
I'm delighted that he's doing that. Yeah.
Shauna's agreeing with me. She's in the same camp as me, that me and Shauna need to be around people, and the whole she's a full working from home position. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't, it's tuning into what people need in their lives and what steals their energy and colour and all of that. I think it's a question, one that we might end on, from Geraldine. Since COVID, have you found that the majority of staff are now working from home more than in office? As I think will escalate people's mental health issues.
Well, I think so. It's like you just said, Eric, right? Some people are far more attuned and capable, comfortable and confident working from home. Some people just don't like it. But that's kind of the whole point of the chameleon system, is not to give you a generic, you must do it this way, but actually mold it and fit it around your individual needs. Why does Eric need to come into the office rather than our business says everyone must stay at home? Well, actually it shows that Eric's more impacted if he does work from home. Well, okay then. To make it more successful for Eric, we'll have him into the business. And then when HSE knock on the door, what did you do to minimise the risk on Eric? Well, we identified that he works far better when he's coming into the office. He's less at risk of developing mental health issues. So we put that into place for him.
Wow. This is our second Crux Cast with you. No one's ever done a third, but I have a feeling that later on this year we should catch up and do a third, because this is fascinating.
I just hit record and leave me here, Eric, for the next 2 hours, and you can come back and get material whenever you want.
Chat away to Andrew and Wendy and Grant.
I will just babble. I'll just keep going.
Absolutely. That's probably before we started this chat. Full disclosure, we're not into secrets here. Brett and I were talking about him running a live on this very subject. I think the evidence is clear that the people want this, Brett. So everybody start chanting, Brett, live. We want it. Listen.
It would be a 24-hour.
Listen, always great to catch up with you. This is the Crux Cast number 67 with Brett Townsley. If you're not connected to Brett, you can find him easily. He puts out lovely content, helpful content, really helpful stuff. Drew Rance is saying, great conversations, guys. Look forward to joining your training course. Awesome. So let's hope, because bottom line is, organizations might be thinking this is another thing we have to do. Doing a bit of positive good for people is a very good thing, and and being able to get a process in place and really understand that what you're doing is making a difference is pretty damn cool for an organization, right? Loved it today. Thank you for your openness, and thank you for our lovely questions from our guests. This has been the Crux Cast. Let's do it again.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers, Eric.
We will see you later. I'm going to go out with our little movie, and then we'll end it because I like it. I like this little movie. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah.